World War II Summary. What if one single war could reshape the entire world, change borders, destroy cities, and redefine humanity itself? World War II was not just a conflict between nations. It was a global catastrophe that affected millions of lives and left a permanent mark on history. It began in 1939 and ended in 1945. In just 6 years, over 70 million people lost their lives. Entire cities were reduced to rubble. New weapons were created. And the balance of power in the world changed forever. This is the story of World War II, how it started, how it was fought, and how it finally came to an end. The roots of World War II go back to the end of World War I. After that war, Germany was forced to accept harsh punishments under the Treaty of Versailles. It lost territory, its military was restricted, and it had to pay massive reparations. This created anger and economic struggle inside Germany. People were frustrated, poor, and desperate for change. Out of this situation rose a man named Adolf Hitler. He promised to restore Germany's power, rebuild its economy, and take revenge for the humiliation of the past. Under his leadership, Germany began to secretly rebuild its military. Then it openly started expanding its territory. In 1938, Germany took control of Austria. Soon after, it demanded parts of Czechoslovakia. European powers tried to avoid another war by giving in to some of these demands, hoping peace could be maintained. But that peace didn't last. On September 1, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. This was the moment everything changed. 2 days later, Britain and France declared war on Germany. World War II had officially begun. Germany used a new style of warfare called blitzkrieg, or lightning war. It involved fast-moving tanks, powerful air attacks, and quick strikes that overwhelmed the enemy before they could respond. Using this strategy, Germany quickly defeated Poland. Then it moved west. In 1940, Germany invaded countries like Belgium, the Netherlands, and France. Within weeks, France fell. It was a shocking victory. At this point, much of Europe was under German control. Only Britain remained standing against Hitler in the West. Germany launched a massive air campaign known as the Battle of Britain. For months, German planes bombed British cities, trying to force them to surrender. But Britain did not give up. With strong leadership and determined resistance, they defended their skies and prevented a German invasion. Meanwhile, the war was expanding. In 1941, Hitler made a major decision that would change the course of the war. He invaded the Soviet Union. This operation was one of the largest military campaigns in history. At first, German forces advanced quickly. But the Soviet Union was vast, and its winters were brutal. German troops were not prepared for the extreme cold. Supplies ran low. Progress slowed. Then the Soviets began to fight back. One of the most important battles was the Battle of Stalingrad. It was long, brutal, and deadly. Soldiers fought street by street, building by building. In the end, the German army was surrounded and defeated. This marked a turning point in the war. From that moment on, Germany began to lose ground in the east. While this was happening, another major event took place that changed the war completely. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, a United States naval base in Hawaii. The attack was sudden and devastating. Many ships were destroyed, and thousands of soldiers were killed. The next day, the United States declared war on Japan. Soon after, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States. Now, the war had become truly global. The United States joined the Allies, bringing massive resources, troops, and industrial power. From this point, the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, began to face stronger resistance. In North Africa, Allied forces fought against German and Italian troops. Eventually, they gained control of the region. In 1943, the Allies invaded Italy. After heavy fighting, Italy surrendered. However, Germany continued to fight in the region. The biggest moment in Western Europe came in 1944. On June 6, known as D-Day, Allied forces launched a massive invasion of Nazi-occupied France. Thousands of soldiers landed on the beaches of Normandy. It was one of the largest military operations in history. The fighting was intense, but the Allies succeeded in establishing a foothold. From there, they began to push German forces back across Europe. At the same time, the Soviet Union was advancing from the east. Germany was now trapped between two powerful forces. By 1945, Allied troops were closing in on Germany from all sides. Berlin, the capital, was surrounded. In April 1945, Adolf Hitler took his own life. Shortly after, Germany surrendered. The war in Europe was over. But the war in the Pacific continued. The United States fought against Japan across islands in the Pacific Ocean. Battles were fierce and costly. Japan refused to surrender. Then, in August 1945, the United States used a new and devastating weapon. An atomic bomb. The first bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. The second on Nagasaki. The destruction was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Entire cities were destroyed in seconds. Tens of thousands died instantly, and many more suffered in the following years. After this, Japan surrendered. World War II finally came to an end. The impact of the war was enormous. Millions of soldiers and civilians had died. Cities were destroyed. Economies were shattered. But the world also began to rebuild. New global organizations were created to prevent future wars. The United Nations was established to promote peace and cooperation. The war also changed the balance of power. The United States and the Soviet Union emerged as superpowers, leading to a new period known as the Cold War. World War II was not just a war of armies. It was a war of ideas, power, and survival. It showed both the best and worst of humanity. Courage, sacrifice, and unity on one side. Destruction, hatred, and suffering on the other. And even today, its lessons remain important. Because history is not just about the past. It is a warning for the future. A reminder of what can happen when conflict grows unchecked. And a reminder of the importance of peace. Even though World War II had ended in 1945, its impact did not end there. In many ways, the end of the war was actually the beginning of a new global struggle. Because after the defeat of Germany and Japan, two powerful nations stood at the top of the world, the United States and the Soviet Union. They had been allies during the war. But now, without a common enemy, tensions between them began to rise. They had different ideologies, different goals, and different visions for the future. The United States supported democracy and capitalism. The Soviet Union supported communism and strict government control. This difference led to a new kind of conflict, one without direct fighting between the two sides, but full of tension, competition, and fear. This period became known as the Cold War. But before that, the world had to deal with the immediate consequences of World War II. Europe was devastated. Cities were destroyed. Infrastructure was broken. Millions of people were homeless. Countries like Germany were divided into zones controlled by the Allied powers. Eventually, Germany itself was split into two separate nations, East Germany and West Germany. Berlin, the capital, was also divided. This division became one of the most powerful symbols of the Cold War. Meanwhile, Japan was occupied and rebuilt under American supervision. Its military was limited, and it began transforming into a peaceful and economically strong nation. One of the most important developments after the war was the creation of the United Nations. The goal of this organization was simple: prevent another global conflict like World War II. Countries came together to promote peace, cooperation, and dialogue instead of war. But even with these efforts, the fear of another conflict remained. Because World War II had introduced something new to the world: nuclear weapons. The atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki showed just how powerful and destructive these weapons were. And now, other countries wanted them too. This led to a nuclear arms race, especially between the United States and the Soviet Union. Both sides built more and more powerful weapons, creating a situation where a future war could destroy the entire world. This fear kept the two sides from directly fighting each other, but it also kept the world in constant tension. Beyond politics and power, World War II also changed societies in many ways. During the war, women had taken on new roles. They worked in factories, drove vehicles, and supported the war effort in ways that had never been seen before. After the war, this began to change how societies viewed women's roles. It slowly led to more rights and opportunities in many countries. The war also accelerated technological progress. Radar systems, advanced aircraft, and early computers were developed during this time. While these technologies were created for war, they later helped shape the modern world. But not all changes were positive. The war revealed some of the darkest actions in human history. The Holocaust, carried out by Nazi Germany, resulted in the deaths of millions of innocent people, especially Jews. This tragedy shocked the world and led to a greater focus on human rights and international laws. After the war, trials were held to punish those responsible for war crimes. These trials sent a strong message that such actions would not go unpunished. Even today, these events are remembered as a warning of what can happen when hatred and power go unchecked. World War II also led to the end of many colonial empires. Countries in Asia and Africa began demanding independence. Over the next few decades, many nations gained freedom from European control. This changed the global map and gave rise to many new countries. So while the war ended in 1945, its effects continued to shape the world for decades. It influenced politics, technology, society, and international relations. It created new conflicts, but also new efforts for peace. And most importantly, it left behind lessons. Lessons about the cost of war. Lessons about the dangers of extreme power. Lessons about the importance of cooperation. World War II was one of the most significant events in human history. It showed how destructive conflict can be, but also how strong people can be in the face of it. And even now, its legacy continues to influence the world we live in today. Because history is not just something we study. It is something we learn from. By the time the world began to recover from World War II, one thing was clear. Nothing would ever be the same again. The war had changed not just countries, but the entire direction of human history. Before World War II, global power was mostly held by European empires. Countries like Britain, France, and Germany dominated world affairs. But after the war, that balance shifted. Europe was weakened. Its cities were damaged, its economies drained, and its people exhausted. In its place, two new superpowers rose, the United States and the Soviet Union. This shift marked the beginning of a new era. An era not defined by world wars, but by tension, competition, and the constant threat of conflict. The Cold War was not fought with massive armies on battlefields like World War II. Instead, it was fought through influence, alliances, and the fear of nuclear destruction. And that fear existed because of what World War II had introduced to the world. Nuclear weapons. For the first time in history, humans had the power to destroy entire cities in seconds. And possibly, the entire planet. This changed how nations thought about war. Because now, another global conflict wouldn't just be deadly. It could be the end of everything. That realization forced countries to think differently. To be more cautious. To be more strategic. To avoid direct confrontation at all costs. In a strange way, the destruction of World War II created a fear so strong that it helped prevent another world war. But the impact of the war was not just political. It was human. Millions of families had lost loved ones. Entire generations had grown up during conflict. Cities had to be rebuilt from nothing. Lives had to be started again. And yet, people moved forward. Countries rebuilt. Economies recovered. Societies adapted. Out of the destruction came resilience. Out of the suffering came strength. And out of the chaos came a desire for peace. This is why organizations like the United Nations became so important. They represented hope. Hope that countries could solve problems through discussion instead of war. Hope that cooperation could replace conflict. Hope that the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. But history has shown that peace is not automatic. It requires effort. It requires understanding. And most importantly, it requires learning from the past. World War II left behind many lessons. It showed how dangerous extreme ideologies can be. It showed how quickly conflict can grow if it is not controlled. It showed how powerful nations can become, and how dangerous that power can be. But it also showed something else. It showed courage. The courage of soldiers who fought on the front lines. The courage of civilians who survived bombings and hardship. The courage of people who stood against injustice, even when it was dangerous. These stories are just as important as the battles themselves. Because they remind us that even in the darkest times, humanity can still shine. Today, when we look back at World War II, we don't just see a war. We see a turning point. A moment where the world faced one of its greatest challenges, and was forced to change. The borders we see today, the alliances between countries, the global systems in place, all of them have been shaped in some way by this war. Even modern technology and international law carry the influence of that time. Which is why remembering World War II is so important. Not to relive the past, but to understand it. Because understanding leads to awareness. And awareness leads to better choices. The story of World War II is not just about destruction. It is also about rebuilding. About learning. About moving forward. And most importantly, it is about a simple but powerful idea. That even after the worst conflicts in history, peace is still possible. But only if we choose it.